In America, justice is supposed to be blind. But too often, it sees the size of your wallet before it sees the truth. Welcome to American Justice 21, the show that pulls back the curtain on a system that works for the wealthy, and leaves the rest behind. I'm Leah Fordum, and today we're going deep into the cracks, the contradictions, and the consequences of a justice system that claims fairness but often delivers inequality. Here's the reality: if you're rich, you can buy time, expertise, and influence. If you're poor, you're told to settle, plead, or wait in line. And that's not just opinion, it's backed by decades of data. In 2025, public defenders across the U.S. are handling an average of 400 cases per attorney per year, far above the recommended limit of 150 for felonies and 400 for misdemeanors. That means your lawyer might have less than an hour to prepare for your case. Think about that: your freedom, your future, decided in 60 minutes or less. With these realities in mind, it's no wonder that disparities persist, not as isolated incidents but as patterns woven into the very fabric of our justice system. The numbers are staggering. The U.S. spends billions to keep people behind bars, yet invests a fraction of that in ensuring every defendant has a fair shot at justice. Bail reform limps forward unevenly, and wrongful convictions remain a haunting testament to the system's flaws. As we look at the data, sentencing gaps, racial disparities, and the prevalence of plea deals for those unable to afford bail, it becomes clear that justice, far from being blind, is often swayed by the circumstances of race and wealth. So as we move forward, let's ask ourselves not just what justice is supposed to be, but what we're willing to do to make it real for everyone. Next, we'll turn our attention to the public defenders, the unsung heroes struggling to protect rights in a system stacked against them. What does fairness look like when your advocate is stretched thin across hundreds of cases? Stay with us as we dig deeper into the fight for true justice in America. The state of American justice. Let's start with the big picture. The U.S. spends $80 billion annually on incarceration, yet allocates a fraction of that to public defense. Bail reform? It's happening, but unevenly. States like New York and Illinois have eliminated cash bail for most offenses, while others cling to a system that criminalizes poverty. And wrongful convictions? They're not rare mistakes, they're systemic failures. The National Registry of Exonerations reports over 3,400 exonerations since 1989, with racial disparities glaring. Black Americans represent nearly 50% of those cases, despite being only 13% of the population. Here's a question: if justice is blind, why does race and wealth keep showing up in the data? Why do we see sentencing gaps where black defendants receive sentences 19% longer than white defendants for similar crimes? Why do we see plea bargains offered to those who can't afford bail, deals that prioritize speed over fairness? These are not just numbers, they are lived realities for millions. The impact ripples beyond prison walls, affecting families, communities, and future generations. When public defenders are stretched thin and justice hinges on resources, the promise of equality before the law becomes a distant ideal. As we turn to those tasked with defending the most vulnerable, we see that their struggle is emblematic of the larger fight for fairness. In the following segment, we'll meet these advocates, the public defenders, who navigate impossible caseloads and chronic underfunding, standing as the last safeguard in a system where the odds are stacked against those without means. Their daily battles reveal the urgent need to rethink priorities, invest in true justice, and recognize that reform is not just policy, it's a commitment to every person's right to a fair trial. In a moment, we'll talk about the people fighting to level the playing field, the public defenders. They're overworked, underfunded, and often the only line between a defendant and a system designed to convict. But first, let's pause and ask, what does fairness mean when your lawyer has 400 other clients? Public defenders, the unsung heroes. Let's talk about the people who stand between ordinary citizens and a system that often feels stacked against them, public defenders. These are the lawyers who show up every day in courtrooms across America, fighting for those who can't afford private counsel. They're not in it for fame or fortune, they're in it because the Constitution guarantees the right to counsel, and someone has to make that promise real. Every day, public defenders shoulder immense responsibility, stepping into packed courtrooms with little more than determination and a deep sense of duty. They face overwhelming caseloads, scarce resources, and relentless pressure to deliver justice for those who would otherwise be voiceless. These attorneys work long hours, often sacrificing personal time, all to uphold a fundamental promise, that every person, regardless of means, deserves a fair shot in court. Yet, despite their commitment, the odds are stacked against them: limited budgets, outdated technology, and caseloads that far exceed recommended limits make it a daily uphill battle. Still, public defenders persist, advocating tirelessly and striving to ensure that the right to counsel is not just a constitutional ideal, but a lived reality for thousands of Americans who depend on their unwavering support. But here's the truth: public defenders are drowning. In 2025, the average public defender in the U.S. is handling 400 to 500 cases per year. The American Bar Association recommends no more than 150 felony cases annually for one attorney. That means defenders are working at 2 or 3 times the safe limit. Imagine trying to prepare for trial when you barely have time to read the case file. The consequences are dire. With so many cases and so little time, crucial details can be missed, witnesses can go uncontacted, and the defense that every person is constitutionally promised becomes a race against the clock rather than a true fight for justice. And it's not just the numbers, it's the resources. Many public defense offices operate on shoestring budgets. Some don't have investigators. Others lack basic technology to track cases. In rural areas, defenders might drive hundreds of miles just to meet a client. And when offices are underfunded, guess what happens? Delays. Plea deals. Pressure to move cases quickly, even if that means sacrificing thorough defense. And it's not just the numbers, it's the resources. Many public defense offices operate on shoestring budgets. Some don't have investigators. Others lack basic technology to track cases. In rural areas, defenders might drive hundreds of miles just to meet a client. And when offices are underfunded, guess what happens? Delays. Plea deals. Pressure to move cases quickly, even if that means sacrificing thorough defense. These harsh realities have immediate consequences for those caught in the system. In places where public defenders can barely scrape together the tools they need, the timeline for justice shrinks to minutes, not days or weeks. Take Louisiana, for example, where a recent report found that public defenders spent an average of just 7 minutes per case before advising a plea, barely enough time to grasp the facts, let alone fight for a fair outcome. In that fleeting window, lives can be forever altered, with rushed decisions leading to prison sentences, lost jobs, and fractured families. The pressure to resolve cases quickly doesn't just rob defendants of a robust defense, it can mean innocent people accepting guilt for crimes they didn't commit. That's why every minute, every resource, and every advocate matters. The cost of neglecting public defense isn't just measured in court dockets, but in real human consequences for years to come. Let's put this in perspective. In Louisiana, a recent report showed that public defenders spent an average of 7 minutes per case before advising a plea. 7 minutes. That's less time than it takes to order coffee at a busy cafe. And yet, those 7 minutes can decide whether someone goes home or goes to prison. That fleeting window of time underscores the urgency and gravity of every moment a public defender spends with a client. When justice is compressed into minutes, the risks of error and injustice multiply. The consequences of such haste are profound, reverberating through a person's life and the lives of those around them. When a rushed plea deal is all that stands between freedom and incarceration, the stakes are impossibly high: years lost behind bars, families fractured, jobs and homes forfeited, and for the innocent, a lifetime burdened by stigma. This is why the fight for adequate resources and time in public defense is not an abstract policy issue. It is a direct battle to safeguard the rights, dignity, and futures of real people every single day. Why does this matter? Because the stakes are enormous. A rushed plea deal can mean years behind bars. It can mean losing your job, your home, your family. And for those who are innocent, it can mean a lifetime of stigma for something they didn't do. The consequences of insufficient public defense ripple far beyond the courtroom. They pull entire communities into cycles of instability and loss. When a person's fate is determined by the constraints on their defender's time and resources, the ideals of justice are hollowed out, leaving real people to bear the weight of a system that moves too quickly and cares too little for individual stories. In these moments, the fight for fair defense isn't just about legal outcomes, it's about preserving hope, dignity, and the basic promise that everyone deserves a genuine opportunity to be heard. Now, here's the good news: reform is happening. States like New York and Washington have increased funding for public defense. Some jurisdictions are experimenting with holistic defense models, where lawyers work alongside social workers and advocates to address the root causes of crime. And technology is starting to play a role, with case management tools that help defenders track deadlines and evidence more efficiently. Now, here's the good news: reform is happening. States like New York and Washington have increased funding for public defense. Some jurisdictions are experimenting with holistic defense models, where lawyers work alongside social workers and advocates to address the root causes of crime. And technology is starting to play a role, with case management tools that help defenders track deadlines and evidence more efficiently. Despite these promising developments, the pace of change remains slow, and the benefits of reform are not yet felt everywhere. While some public defenders are beginning to see improvements in their ability to serve clients thanks to new support and innovative practices, many others are still waiting for meaningful relief. The reality is that, in countless courtrooms across the country, defenders continue to struggle with excessive workloads and limited backing, highlighting the urgent need for reforms to reach every jurisdiction. As efforts to modernize public defense systems gain momentum, it is clear that sustained commitment and widespread investment are essential to ensure that access to quality legal representation becomes the norm rather than the exception. But progress is uneven. In many states, defenders are still paid less than prosecutors. They're still working nights and weekends just to keep up. And they're still facing burnout at alarming rates. A recent survey found that over 60% of public defenders report symptoms of severe stress and fatigue, with many leaving the profession within 5 years. Despite these challenges, meaningful change remains elusive for many defenders across the country. While some states have begun to address pay disparities and working conditions, countless public defenders continue to find themselves overwhelmed by excessive workloads and insufficient support. The toll of constant stress and exhaustion has led to high turnover rates, draining valuable experience from the field and leaving remaining attorneys to shoulder even greater burdens. As the system struggles to retain skilled defenders, the need for comprehensive reform, one that ensures fair compensation, manageable caseloads, and adequate resources, becomes even more urgent. Only by investing in the people tasked with upholding justice can we hope to break the cycle of burnout and build a stronger, more equitable foundation for everyone relying on public defense. So what can be done? First, funding. Public defense needs to be treated as an essential service, not an afterthought. Second, caseload caps. Enforcing limits on the number of cases per attorney is critical to ensuring quality representation. Third, community support. Public defenders are often invisible heroes. They need allies, advocates, journalists, and everyday citizens who understand that their fight is our fight. Ultimately, the path forward demands not just policy shifts but a cultural reckoning, recognizing that robust public defense is the backbone of a fair legal system. True progress means making long-term investments that attract and retain skilled defenders, equipping them with the tools and support they need, and fostering public understanding that when defenders are empowered, the entire community benefits. Because here's the bottom line: when public defenders fail, justice fails. And when justice fails, we all pay the price. Because here's the bottom line: when public defenders fail, justice fails. And when justice fails, we all pay the price. Coming up next, know your rights. Because while defenders fight in the courtroom, you need to know how to protect yourself before you ever get there. Know your rights. Now let's talk about something every listener needs to know: your rights. Because here's the truth: the justice system isn't just about what happens in court. It starts the moment you interact with law enforcement. And what you say, or don't say, can change everything. Understanding your rights is crucial, not only because it shapes your experience with law enforcement, but also because it equips you to make informed choices from the very first moment of contact. From knowing when to remain silent, to asking for an attorney, to understanding the limits of police authority in searches, each decision you make can have lasting consequences. By staying calm, asserting your rights verbally, and seeking legal counsel whenever possible, you empower yourself to navigate a system that can be overwhelming and unpredictable. Remember, preparation and awareness are your strongest safeguards. The more you know about your rights, the better you can protect yourself and ensure that your voice is heard throughout every step of the process. First rule: you have the right to remain silent. That's not just a TV line, it's the Fifth Amendment. If you're stopped by police, you don't have to answer questions beyond identifying yourself. You can say, "I'm exercising my right to remain silent." And then stop talking. Why? Because anything you say can, and will, be used against you. Equally important is your right to legal representation. If you're arrested, make it clear that you want to speak to a lawyer, and do not attempt to explain your situation or negotiate with officers. This request activates your Sixth Amendment protections, and once invoked, police questioning should cease. If authorities persist, they're violating your rights. Remember, staying silent and asking for an attorney are powerful tools that safeguard your interests from the very beginning of any law enforcement encounter. Second rule: you have the right to an attorney. If you're arrested, ask for a lawyer immediately. Don't explain, don't negotiate, don't try to clear things up. Just say, "I want to speak to my attorney." That triggers your Sixth Amendment right. And here's the key: once you ask for a lawyer, questioning should stop. If it doesn't, that's a violation. Equally important is understanding the boundaries police must respect once you've invoked your right to counsel. If officers persist in questioning you after you've requested a lawyer, they are infringing on your constitutional protections, and anything said beyond that point may be subject to challenge in court. Staying silent and firmly repeating your request for legal representation not only shields your interests, but also strengthens your position should your case proceed further. Remember, exercising your rights is not about being difficult, it's about safeguarding yourself in a system where every word and action can have lasting impact. As we move forward, it's crucial to recognize that asserting your rights early is the foundation of a fair process, setting the stage for all subsequent interactions and outcomes. Third rule: consent matters. If police ask to search your car, your bag, or your home, you can say no, unless they have a warrant. And if they do have a warrant, ask to see it. Read it. Make sure it's signed and specifies what they can search. Why? Because consent searches are one of the most common ways people give up rights without realizing it. Just as asserting your right to refuse a search can protect you from unintended consequences, it's equally vital to remember that how you respond during these encounters can shape the entire outcome. If officers insist on searching despite your refusal, remain calm and do not physically resist. Instead, clearly state that you do not consent and observe the process closely. Take mental note of details: what was said, who was present, and whether the officers produced a valid warrant, so you can accurately document everything later. This approach not only helps preserve your rights but also provides valuable evidence should any legal questions arise down the line. By combining verbal assertion with careful observation, you minimize risk and reinforce your position, setting the stage for a safer, more informed interaction as you move forward through the justice process. Fourth rule: don't resist physically. Even if you believe the stop is unlawful, don't fight. Assert your rights verbally, stay calm, and document everything later. Physical resistance can lead to additional charges and danger. While it can be frustrating to feel powerless or unheard during a police encounter, your safety must always come first. By remaining composed, stating your objections clearly, and avoiding any physical confrontation, you protect both your well-being and your legal standing. Instead, focus on observing and remembering important details, such as badge numbers, patrol car identifiers, or witness information, so you can accurately recount what happened later. This approach not only helps preserve your rights but also strengthens any potential defense, ensuring that your voice is represented through the proper channels. As we move forward, it's crucial to recognize that even when the situation feels unfair, your best defense is to stay calm, stand firm in your rights, and document everything for the record, from your first interaction through every subsequent step in the process. Now, let's talk about plea deals. Over 95% of criminal cases in the U.S. end in a plea bargain. That means most people never see a trial. Why? Because trials take time, and prosecutors use plea deals to move cases quickly. But here's the catch: plea deals often come with collateral consequences, like losing voting rights, facing immigration issues, or being barred from certain jobs. Before you accept a plea, ask, what are the long-term effects? And if you can, consult a lawyer, even if it's a public defender. Plea bargains can seem like an easy way out, but it's critical to weigh the immediate benefits against what you might give up in the future: freedom, opportunities, and civic participation. While the pressure to resolve your case quickly can feel immense, especially if you're facing jail time or mounting legal bills, don't underestimate the importance of understanding every condition attached to a plea. Take the time to review the agreement line by line, and don't hesitate to ask questions or request clarification. Remember, you have the right to know exactly what you're agreeing to, and no one should rush you into a decision that could shape the rest of your life. By staying informed and seeking guidance, you protect yourself, not only in the present, but for years to come. Finally, appeals. If you're convicted, you may have the right to appeal. But deadlines matter. In many states, you have 30 days to file a notice of appeal. Miss that window, and you lose the chance. So act fast. Finally, appeals. If you're convicted, you may have the right to appeal. But deadlines matter. In many states, you have 30 days to file a notice of appeal. Miss that window, and you lose the chance. So act fast. Taking prompt action is essential, not only to preserve your right to challenge the conviction, but also to ensure access to higher courts that could review errors or injustices from your trial. Appeals are time-sensitive and procedural, so consult with your attorney immediately to discuss options and initiate the process without delay. By understanding these crucial timelines and responding swiftly, you keep the door open for justice and protect your opportunity for a fair outcome. These aren't just tips, they're lifelines. Because knowing your rights isn't about being combative. It's about being prepared. And preparation is power. These aren't just tips, they're lifelines. Because knowing your rights isn't about being combative. It's about being prepared. And preparation is power. Understanding the difference between simply knowing your rights and actively putting them to use is crucial to navigating real-world challenges. As we move forward, it's time to focus on the practical side, equipping yourself with the right tools and resources so that when the moment comes, you're not just informed but empowered to act. Whether it's accessing legal aid, finding pro bono support, or gathering and organizing evidence, these strategies transform abstract rights into concrete action. After all, true preparation means having both knowledge and a plan for when you need help most, ensuring that your rights work for you, not just in theory, but in practice. Next up, tools for the people. Because rights are only useful if you know how to use them, and where to find help when you need it. Tools for the people. Rights are powerful, but they're only useful if you know how to use them, and where to find help when you need it. So let's talk about tools. Real, practical resources that can make the difference between feeling powerless and taking control. Whether you're facing a sudden legal challenge or planning ahead for peace of mind, knowing where to turn makes all the difference. From local legal aid organizations and pro bono attorney networks to innovative online platforms and grassroots advocacy groups, these resources stand ready to help you bridge the gap between knowing your rights and asserting them effectively. By tapping into legal clinics, digital tools, and community support, you can move from uncertainty to action, equipping yourself to navigate the legal system with confidence and clarity. Empowerment starts not just with knowledge, but with access, and these practical solutions ensure you're never left to face challenges alone. First up, legal aid organizations. These are nonprofits that provide free or low-cost legal help to people who can't afford an attorney. Some of the biggest names include the Legal Services Corporation, which funds local legal aid offices across the country, and lawhelp.org, a national directory that connects you to resources in your state. If you're facing eviction, custody battles, or consumer debt, these organizations can help. These legal aid organizations not only offer guidance on navigating the court system but also connect you to specialized assistance tailored to your unique situation, ensuring that even if you're overwhelmed by paperwork or legal jargon, you have advocates in your corner who can demystify the process and help you assert your rights effectively. By reaching out early, you increase your chances of finding the right support, whether that means getting help with urgent filings, understanding your options, or finding referrals for additional services. Next, pro bono networks. Many private attorneys volunteer their time to represent clients for free. Groups like the National Association of Pro Bono Professionals and local bar associations often run programs where lawyers take on cases at no cost. If you're in crisis, ask your local bar association about pro bono opportunities. Next, pro bono networks. Many private attorneys volunteer their time to represent clients for free. Groups like the National Association of Pro Bono Professionals and local bar associations often run programs where lawyers take on cases at no cost. If you're in crisis, ask your local bar association about pro bono opportunities. Pro bono networks are just one way to access legal help when you need it most, but remember that support comes in many forms. Beyond these volunteer attorney programs, you can also look to community legal clinics for guidance, places where law students and nonprofit staff offer walk-in or scheduled sessions to help you navigate paperwork, court procedures, and hearing preparation, all at no cost. By combining the expertise of pro bono attorneys with the practical, hands-on support available at these clinics, you're building a safety net that can catch you no matter where you are in the legal process. This multi-layered approach ensures that, whether your challenge is urgent or ongoing, there's always a path forward, one that's both accessible and empowering. Third, community legal clinics. These are walk-in or appointment-based services, often run by law schools or nonprofits, where you can get advice without paying a dime. They're especially helpful for things like filling out forms, understanding court procedures, and preparing for hearings. Beyond offering guidance on paperwork and court logistics, community legal clinics often serve as a welcoming bridge for those new to the legal system, providing not just information but also encouragement and practical strategies to help you feel more confident as you approach your case. These clinics can connect you to ongoing support networks, clarify what to expect during hearings, and empower you with the tools needed to take each step with greater certainty. Fourth, online tools. Technology is changing the game. Websites like JustFix help tenants fight illegal evictions. Upsolve assists people filing for bankruptcy without a lawyer. And platforms like Court Listener and OYES make court opinions accessible to everyone. These tools aren't a substitute for legal advice, but they can help you understand the system. Fourth, online tools. Technology is changing the game. Websites like JustFix help tenants fight illegal evictions. Upsolve assists people filing for bankruptcy without a lawyer. And platforms like Court Listener and OYES make court opinions accessible to everyone. These tools aren't a substitute for legal advice, but they can help you understand the system. These online resources, while not a replacement for tailored legal counsel, can empower you to navigate the process with greater clarity and self-assurance, offering step-by-step guides, document templates, and real-time updates that demystify legal language and procedures, ensuring that, even when representing yourself, you're equipped with the practical knowledge and organizational strategies the court system demands. By integrating technology into your preparation, alongside keeping well-organized records, tracking deadlines diligently, and securely storing your documents, you're building a strong foundation for your case and minimizing the risk of costly administrative errors or missed opportunities. Fifth, document preparation. If you're representing yourself, organization is everything. Keep copies of every document, pleadings, motions, evidence, in a single folder. Label them clearly. Use timelines to track deadlines. And if you can, scan everything and store it securely online. Courts run on paperwork, and missing one deadline can derail your case. In addition to meticulous document management, don't underestimate the power of community support in your legal journey. Grassroots advocacy groups and nonprofit organizations like the Equal Justice Initiative, the Bail Project, and Innocence Project champion systemic reform while offering resources and education that help individuals navigate the justice system more effectively. By connecting with these networks, staying informed about policy changes, and leveraging both personal organization and collective knowledge, you create a comprehensive strategy for asserting your rights. These practical steps may not eliminate every obstacle, but together, they provide a solid foundation of hope, guidance, and actionable plans to face legal challenges head-on. Finally, community support. You're not alone. Advocacy groups like the Equal Justice Initiative, the Bail Project, and Innocence Project fight systemic injustice every day. They offer resources, education, and sometimes direct assistance. Follow them, learn from them, and share their work. These tools aren't magic. They won't erase the challenges of navigating a complex system. But they can give you leverage. They can give you hope. And most importantly, they can give you a plan. By building connections with these advocacy groups and harnessing the practical support from legal aid organizations, pro bono networks, community clinics, and digital platforms, you're equipping yourself not just with knowledge but with a reliable roadmap for moving forward. As you navigate each step, remember that the combined power of personal preparation and collective action offers both resilience and reassurance. While the journey through the legal system may be daunting, the resources and allies available to you ensure that you have the tools, encouragement, and solidarity needed to face each challenge with confidence and clarity. Coming up, System Check. What's changing in 2025, and what it means for you? System Check. Now let's zoom out and look at the system itself. Because while individual cases tell powerful stories, the real question is, what's changing? What reforms are happening right now, and what do they mean for you? From bail reform to innovations in public defense, sentencing, and juvenile justice, the legal system is undergoing a series of significant transformations that directly impact individuals and communities. These ongoing changes, such as the elimination of cash bail in some states, increased funding for public defenders, and a push for greater transparency through technology, reflect a growing recognition of systemic inequities and the urgent need for more accessible, equitable justice. At the same time, advocacy organizations are driving efforts to address persistent disparities and expand alternatives to incarceration, ensuring that progress is grounded in both policy and grassroots action. As these reforms take shape, it's crucial to stay informed, engaged, and proactive, knowing that while the pace of change may be gradual, every step forward is an opportunity to build a more just and inclusive system. First, bail reform. In 2025, we're seeing a major shift. States like Illinois have fully eliminated cash bail for most offenses, following the lead of New Jersey and New York. Why does this matter? Because cash bail has long been a driver of inequality. If you can pay, you go home. If you can't, you sit in jail, sometimes for months, before trial. Eliminating cash bail means fewer people locked up simply because they're poor. But it's not universal. States like Texas and Florida still rely heavily on cash bail, and reform efforts there face strong political resistance. While these changes signal important progress, the reality is nuanced and implementation varies widely across the country. For those navigating the legal system, it's essential to understand not only where reforms have taken hold but also where long-standing practices remain entrenched, as this directly impacts pretrial outcomes and access to justice. As reform efforts continue to gain traction in some regions, advocacy organizations and communities are working to challenge resistance and push for broader change, emphasizing the need for ongoing vigilance, public engagement, and policy innovation to ensure that bail reform delivers on its promise of fairness and equity. This evolving landscape underscores the importance of staying informed and involved, as each shift in policy has tangible consequences for individuals and communities striving for a more just legal system. Second, public defense funding. There's progress, but it's uneven. Washington state recently passed legislation to cap caseloads and increase salaries for public defenders. New York allocated millions to expand defender offices and hire investigators. But in many states, funding remains stagnant. And here's the kicker: even where reforms exist, implementation is slow. Laws don't change overnight. Offices need time and resources to catch up. Meanwhile, the ripple effects of these funding disparities are felt most acutely by those awaiting trial, as overburdened public defenders struggle to devote adequate time and attention to each case. This mismatch between legislative intent and on-the-ground reality means that many individuals still experience long waits for counsel, limited access to investigative resources, and, at times, rushed or inadequate defense. As states grapple with the operational challenges of reform, advocates are calling for sustained investment, ongoing oversight, and community involvement to ensure that improvements in public defense are not just promises on paper but meaningful, measurable change in people's lives. Third, sentencing reform. The federal system has introduced new guidelines aimed at reducing disparities, especially for nonviolent drug offenses. Some states are following suit, revisiting mandatory minimums and expanding alternatives to incarceration. But again, progress varies. In some jurisdictions, judges still have wide discretion, and bias still creeps in. Despite these efforts to reshape sentencing, it's clear that the road ahead is complex and uneven. While federal reforms offer hope for reducing unjust sentences, especially in cases involving nonviolent offenses, the reality is that meaningful change depends on consistent application and robust oversight. As states experiment with new approaches and alternatives to incarceration, advocates are pressing for broader adoption and accountability to ensure that reforms actually translate into fairer outcomes, not just on paper, but in practice. This momentum is mirrored in the push to transform juvenile justice, where the focus is shifting toward prevention, support, and keeping young people engaged in their communities rather than caught up in the court system. Yet, significant hurdles remain, particularly in areas lacking adequate resources to sustain these initiatives and address the root causes of youth involvement with the justice system. Fourth, juvenile justice. There's a growing movement to dismantle the school-to-prison pipeline. States are investing in diversion programs, mental health services, and restorative justice initiatives. The goal? Keep kids out of courtrooms and in classrooms. But challenges remain, especially in communities where resources are scarce. While these efforts to reform juvenile justice represent meaningful steps forward, the reality on the ground is complex. Even as more states adopt prevention-focused models and channel funds into alternatives that prioritize education and well-being, the impact is limited where implementation lags or community supports are insufficient. Sustainable change requires not only policy shifts but also ongoing commitment from local leaders, educators, and families to ensure that every young person has access to the tools and opportunities needed to thrive. As we move forward, bridging the gap between aspiration and action in juvenile justice will depend on persistent advocacy, resource allocation, and a willingness to confront the root causes that funnel youth into the system in the first place. Fifth, technology and transparency. Courts are slowly embracing digital tools. Online case tracking, virtual hearings, and public access to court records are becoming more common. This matters because transparency builds trust. When people can see what's happening in real time, it's harder for injustice to hide. Fifth, technology and transparency. Courts are slowly embracing digital tools. Online case tracking, virtual hearings, and public access to court records are becoming more common. This matters because transparency builds trust. When people can see what's happening in real time, it's harder for injustice to hide. As courts modernize and the justice system becomes more accessible, it's equally vital to confront the persistent racial inequities that undermine true fairness. The data is clear: Black and Latino defendants continue to face disproportionate arrest rates, harsher sentences, and more frequent pretrial detention. Advocacy groups are stepping up, publishing research, lobbying for legislative change, and equipping public defenders to challenge bias in courtrooms, underscoring the crucial role of collective action in driving systemic transformation. Together, transparency and technological innovation can shine a light on injustice, but lasting change also demands an unwavering commitment to racial equity and accountability at every level of the system. And finally, racial equity. The data is clear: disparities persist. Black and Latino defendants still face higher arrest rates, harsher sentences, and more frequent pretrial detention. But advocacy groups are pushing hard for change. Organizations like the Brennan Center and Vera Institute are publishing research, lobbying for legislation, and training public defenders to challenge bias in the courtroom. With these efforts gaining momentum, the push for racial equity is not confined to research and policy proposals. It is increasingly visible in grassroots organizing, courtroom advocacy, and strategic litigation that holds institutions accountable. As technology and transparency initiatives open the doors to court data and proceedings, community members and reformers alike are better equipped to spotlight injustices and demand corrective action. This expanding movement reminds us that advancing equity is a shared responsibility, requiring collaboration across sectors and sustained civic engagement to dismantle systemic barriers and build a justice system that serves every individual fairly and without bias. So what does all this mean for you? It means the system is moving, but slowly. It means reforms are real, but they're fragile. And it means your voice matters. Because every policy change starts with pressure, from voters, from communities, from people who refuse to accept a two-tier system. That's why now is the time to stay engaged, to keep asking questions, and to demand more from those in power. Real change depends on everyday people, advocates, voters, neighbors, standing up for fairness, transparency, and true justice. By raising your voice, supporting reform efforts, and holding leaders accountable, you help transform these fragile reforms into lasting progress. The journey may be gradual, but every action you take helps shape a justice system that honors dignity and equality for all. In a moment, we'll wrap up with a reflection and a call to action. Because knowing the problem is only the first step. The next step is doing something about it. Closing reflection and call to action. We've spent the last few hours pulling back the curtain on a system that claims fairness but often delivers inequality. We've talked about wealth, race, and privilege, and how they shape outcomes in ways that should make every one of us pause. We've explored the lives of public defenders, the rights you need to know, and the tools that can help you fight back. We've looked at reforms, real progress, but also the gaps that remain. But now, as we turn toward reflection and action, the conversation shifts from awareness to responsibility. Knowing the truth about these disparities is a call to do more than observe. It's an invitation to participate in shaping a system that genuinely reflects our ideals of justice. The next step isn't passive, it's about harnessing this knowledge to fuel advocacy, dialogue, and meaningful change within our communities. By refusing to accept the status quo and raising our voices, we become part of the solution, moving reform beyond policy and into everyday practice, where each of us can help close the gaps and build a fairer future for all. So here's the question: what do we do with this knowledge? Do we shrug and say, "That's just how it is"? Or do we act? Because here's the truth: justice isn't a spectator sport. It's not something that happens in a vacuum. It's shaped by laws, by policies, by people, and that means it can change. But change doesn't start in a courtroom. It starts in communities. It starts with conversations. It starts with you. When you recognize your role, as a neighbor, a voter, an advocate, you become part of the force that pushes for progress. Each time you challenge assumptions, raise awareness, or demand accountability, you help build momentum for reform that reaches beyond individual cases and into the very framework of our justice system. If you've ever thought, this system is broken, you're right. But broken systems don't fix themselves. They're repaired by pressure, by voices that refuse to be silent. So speak up. Share this episode. Talk to your friends, your family, your coworkers. Ask hard questions. Why do we accept a system where money buys freedom? Why do we tolerate disparities that punish poverty and perpetuate injustice? If you've ever thought, this system is broken, you're right. But broken systems don't fix themselves. They're repaired by pressure, by voices that refuse to be silent. So speak up. Share this episode. Talk to your friends, your family, your coworkers. Ask hard questions. Why do we accept a system where money buys freedom? Why do we tolerate disparities that punish poverty and perpetuate injustice? And after you've started these conversations and challenged the status quo, channel that awareness into concrete steps, whether it's attending a local hearing, supporting reform-minded organizations, or simply staying informed about upcoming legislation that could shift the balance toward fairness. Each action, no matter how small, chips away at the walls of indifference and helps forge a collective movement for justice. Remember, your voice, your questions, and your courage to confront uncomfortable truths are catalysts for change, turning concern into commitment, and paving the way for a future where everyone's rights are truly protected. And then, take action. Support organizations fighting for reform, the Equal Justice Initiative, the Bail Project, Innocence Project. Volunteer at a legal clinic. Donate if you can. Vote for policies and leaders who believe in fairness, not just for the wealthy, but for everyone. By becoming actively engaged, you play a vital role in upholding the promise of justice for all. Each step you take, whether it's supporting reform organizations, volunteering, donating, or voting, adds strength to the movement for true equality. Your participation signals to those in power that the demand for fairness is unwavering, and that the fight for justice extends beyond words into real-world impact. Together, these efforts help bridge the gap between ideals and reality, ensuring that justice is not just an aspiration, but a lived experience for every member of our community. Because justice isn't just a word. It's a promise. A promise written into our Constitution. A promise that every person, rich or poor, black or white, citizen or immigrant, deserves equal protection under the law. That promise is worth fighting for. And the fight starts now. Because justice isn't just a word. It's a promise. A promise written into our Constitution. A promise that every person, rich or poor, black or white, citizen or immigrant, deserves equal protection under the law. That promise is worth fighting for. And the fight starts now. So here's my challenge to you, don't just listen. Do something. Because when we push for real justice, we don't just change laws, we change lives. So here's my challenge to you, don't just listen. Do something. Because when we push for real justice, we don't just change laws, we change lives. Thank you for spending this time with me. If today's episode helped you, share it. Subscribe. Leave a question for next week's Know Your Rights segment. Check the show notes for links, templates, and ways to get help. And remember, stay informed. Stay prepared. And keep pushing for real justice.